Welcome to another episode of the Voices of the Learning Network podcast. Hello, this is your host today, Bill Banham. And in this episode, we're going to speak with Kirstie Greeny, Head of Learning Strategy over at Elucidat, part of the Learning Pool family. Kirstie is a learning strategist, storyteller, speaker, and connector with more than 20 years experience helping global organizations rethink what successful workplace learning looks like. Kirstie hosts the Learning at Large podcast, convenes roundtables for senior L&D leaders, and is known for translating insights into people-centered strategies that create real engagement, build capability, and deliver measurable impact. And in this conversation, we're going to explore the shifts that are redefining modern learning, the skills L&D teams will need for the decade ahead, and what it really takes to design learning ecosystems that work at scale. Kirstie, how are you doing today? Thank you very much for joining me.
I'm good. Yeah, thanks very much for having me, Bill. It's lovely to be here.
Let's get straight into it. I've got quite a lot of questions for you, maybe too many questions for you. So let's get straight into it. Firstly, what are the biggest changes you're seeing in workplace learning right now?
So I think there's four big forces of change that are really affecting workplaces or our work lives, and therefore they're impacting learning. I'll call them out quickly and then I might have to dive into them to explain. But obviously skills and shift to being skills-based, the deconstruction of career paths as a result of that, AI has to be mentioned, but also employee disconnect, so the lack of employee engagement that's happening at the minute. And if it's okay, I'll tell you a little bit about each of them and they might set a scene for some of the other questions. So Lightcast reports that about a third of people's skills will need replacing within 3 years. Some would estimate that as being, even faster than that. So almost by the next performance review, a third of your current skills could be redundant or need to be replaced or redirected. And so that means from a learning and development point of view, you need to be super agile and be using data to really meet those skills gaps. As a result, career paths in organisations. So the deconstruction of career paths is happening or will be happening for a while. But I think from a learning point of view, we owe it to employees to help them stay employable, to help them find their way through reskilling themselves. And that means we can't lock away learning and content in a corner. So we need to shift towards much more open and available learning strategies that really do help employees move forward and grow themselves. AI was the third one I called out. It's changing everything. It's changing what work is, who does what, how we do it. But it's changing expectations around learning. And I'll talk about AI coaching maybe a bit later, but that's certainly one of the ways that that's coming into play and changing our expectations for just how personalised and just how fast answers might be. But I also want to just call out employee disconnect and disengagement. You might have read Sponge's paper called Generation Numb or seen Gallup's recent employee engagement report. They call employee engagement anemic at the moment. We can't ignore that. That's huge. If we just hurl out loads of learning to people to help them, then it's just not going to stick. People aren't in the right place. So at the time when people need to be really resilient, go through another round of changes, upskill, change everything they're doing, they're exhausted, they're knackered. So we need to be thinking about that psychological safety, that kind of cultural bedrock that sits under learning. So a long answer, but hopefully it sets a scene for where we go next.
Certainly does. Thank you. And where we're going next is I'd like to focus a little bit on what's reshaping how organizations are learning at the moment. Are we moving towards a more embedded workflow driven model or maybe something entirely different? What does that evolution mean for L&D, the function itself?
Yeah, I think we definitely are moving towards workflow driven models. I mean, for years, right, learning professionals have talked about the ideas of being personalized, putting learning in the flow, just in time, being data driven, and that's all going to start coming true. But it might be coming true in a way that might not involve L&D as much as they thought they were going to be involved in the first place. So if we think about the future with AI coaching, for example, you can imagine that a salesperson will come into work in the future, maybe get nudged ahead of a call with some tips, be given some practice scenarios to do about that call they've got coming up. Maybe get some live prompts during the call and then afterwards get personalised feedback and get sent towards some learning. That can all happen through a kind of AI front end, which feels very much theirs and sort of nudges and coaches them forwards. So I think that's definitely on the cards. We're seeing case studies rise and they're not necessarily being developed by L&D teams. They're coming from business units in lots of the cases that I've seen. So there's definitely reshaping happening there. I would question whether that model helps you with the deep skills, critical thinking, systems thinking, and long-term growth, and also mental health. So I think there's lots of gaps that are then left for L&D to kind of step up and fill and lead on. So that's my take on that one.
You're deeply involved in research and roundtables with senior L&D leaders, of course. What are the most consistent hopes, worries, or themes that you're hearing across organisations at the moment?
That's an interesting question. I mean, they do vary. A lot of the people's hopes and worries are stemming from the changes that people are seeing, right? So for some people, they're feeling very optimistic, and other people are feeling concerned. Sometimes that flips over, and the next day they feel the very opposite. But for the more future-facing L&D leaders, so I held a recent roundtable with people who really are thinking about what their strategy should be, could be, the next 1 to 3 years. They're sharing that one of the big challenges or concerns is how to take stakeholders with them as they try and really shift what workplace learning looks like and how it kind of presents itself at work, which is interesting because we've heard before that people in L&D want a seat at the table. It sounds like actually, from lots of research as well, that businesses haven't always seen that L&D are stepping up and giving the value that they would like. So it's somewhere between chicken and egg. So we're now hearing the kind of opposite of like, well, actually, we need to take stakeholders with us. I'm sure that through collaboration and conversation, and maybe that table is now open to sit at, then find the way through. Because who wouldn't want value from learning in an organisation?
Okay, love that. Thank you very much. Okay, next question is a huge one. Let me make it more interesting to our listeners because it's so big. We could get lost in it otherwise. I'm going to challenge you, Kirstie, to answer this one in 60 seconds or less. What skills will be needed by learning practitioners of the future? Go.
Okay, definitely needs analysis, but done really well. Observations, interviews, workflow mapping, consultative questions, empathy. We might need to break the role down into component skills. So I think we'll definitely need storytellers and rich media creators. We'll need change specialists. We'll need skills specialists. We'll need task mappers. We'll need data analysts. We'll need curation specialists to work with AI. We might need agent builders, and we'll definitely need experimenters. But above all, we need to shift towards being ecosystem designers and no longer thinking about one thing in one place. So that's my 60-second answer.
Oh, you had loads of time to spare. Good work. Good work. I wonder what can practitioners start doing today to position themselves for future roles? Everything's changing so much at the moment. Some roles and duties are being replaced by AI and being merged with other positions and whatnot. What are some of those things that folks can be doing today to better position themselves?
So I think that what's interesting is that L&D professionals and practitioners actually have, in some ways, the ideal skill set to help themselves, but we really rarely turn those skills back on ourselves. We're not very good at eating our own dog food. So we can definitely help pinpoint performance problems, the gaps, and solutions for other people all the time, so we can do it for ourselves. So I would say that absolutely get understanding of what your business goals and gaps are, right? Everything starts with that. And that might need to come from asking different kinds of questions and not just asking for it to be handed over to you. And then from there, you can assess your own skills and gaps. You can look at the gaps in your own practice and maybe map out what needs to be changed or developed. You can reflect on the blockers or habits that you're stuck in today that you need to kind of change in order to move forward. So if you're saying yes to orders that come in all the time, or you're not personalizing learning right now, there's definitely some changes to do there. You could set up your own AI coach to help you. You could feed it what your goals are and where the ways in which you need to be working moving forward, help it keep you on track. There might be other resources and nudges that will help you along the way. Don't work on your own, like collaborate with people, find some buddies, find some peers, and maybe carve out 10 to 20% of your time to start doing some experiments to help you move forward, but also then to tell a story and have data for your stakeholders too. So I would say do lots of the juicy stuff that we probably should be doing out there for other people. Start applying it to yourself.
Well, just a quick follow-up to that then. Are you yourself using an AI coach, some sort of agentic AI to help support you? And if so, what's that meant for you, for your output, your productivity, the time that you could spend on the stuff that you enjoy?
That's an interesting question. And I'm going to have to say yes, right? Because I just said that other people should be doing it. So I use AI in different ways all the time. So from simple uses, like for example, I run roundtables and I'll have a transcript from that so I can help kind of pull out some themes or find some key quotes in those transcripts, although some tools love to make them up. So there's kind of, administrative and practical ways of using it. But I tend to work with it to help me structure sessions sometimes. So I might say that I've got these people coming together for this kind of topic. I want to ask these kind of questions, help me put it into a structure, for example. So it will help me kind of tasks like that. So I use it as a kind of buddy alongside with what I'm doing. Because I don't currently work within a kind of broader learning team. So I'm not surrounded by peers necessarily. I work in a slightly different way. I have got a kind of coach side set up to it to help me always be mindful of my audience, what I'm trying to do, and particularly around sort of personal brand stuff. So how it can keep me on track with what I said I was going to be doing, who for and how. And sometimes I'll run my ideas through it and it'll catch me out and be like, no, that's you've got the wrong persona there. For example, you said you were going to stick with learning leaders, for example. So yeah, I do use it as a bit of a coach.
How important are those personas, those archetypes to your work? Is it absolutely essential that you get that right before building on anything else that you do?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the biggest thing I would always say is make sure you are really, really clear on what you're doing something for. Who's in need and what the needs are, right? And if you're not clear on that, then everything's going to go wonky after that. You're just shooting in the dark. So whether that's a learning project or whether you're doing it more, as a kind of community activity, like I might run a roundtable for example, then absolutely you need to have that in mind. For me, yes, there's personas you can set up, but they have to be based on real people and real conversations. I think I put a joke post out a little while ago that it's really easy to generate personas that sort of have bias in them already. I think I put something out that said something like "Meet Jeff, he loves learning." Can't get enough e-learning or something. Because you can kind of imagine that you would kind of assume that somebody might love what we're about to do. So yeah, have conversations. Base everything around real needs, gaps, and sort of what's going on for somebody emotionally as well, what might be standing in their way.
Okay, thank you. We are flying through these questions today. Just a couple more for you. Next one. Well, I like this one. If you could offer one provocation to the L&D community for 2026 and beyond, what would that be? And maybe it's something you wish more teams would challenge, upgrade, or let go, just as a bit of a prompt there.
So I'm going to say something. It might be two things actually, but they're maybe not new, but I'm just going to say them again. One is to drop the addiction to speed. This idea that we always need to be meeting demand of what, and what is the impact of that anyway. And the flip side obsession with tracking what people have then done through completions and scores. We talk about it all the time, but we are very much still there. So in a few years, completion of a thing just won't make sense. So not in a kind of ecosystem design world where someone's doing some learning in the flow that's hyper personalized, either on demand or is being pushed to them at a moment of need. The completion of a component part or a moment in that means what? Especially when we're tracking performance. So we need to reframe how we value ourselves as a function, how you might value yourself in your role, and tell a new story that's not about what you've done or how much a learner's done or an employee, because it's not about the things, So it's about shifting our mindsets to being orchestrators to foster the conditions for learning and kind of pulling back from that kind of, I think they're kind of ownership claims. I did this and I did it really fast. We need to move away from that.
Excellent. And just finally for today, Kirstie, how can our listeners connect with you? Is that LinkedIn? Do you want to share your email? I bet you're super cool and all over Instagram and TikTok and places. Tell us more.
Actually, the best place to get hold of me and where you'll see me pop.
Sorry, I meant to mute myself. I muted you, but please start your answer again. I'll make sure I capture that at the end.
So the best place to get hold of me and where you'll see me pop up a lot is LinkedIn. So Kirstie Greeny is on LinkedIn. And also you can get me kirstie.greeny@learningpool.com if you want to drop me a line by email. But yeah, LinkedIn's the one that I mainly use.
Me too. Okay, well, that just leaves me to say for today, Kirstie Greeny, thank you very much for being my guest.
Thank you. Been a pleasure.